Imagine you walk into a room and there's some people sitting cross-legged on the floor, slapping their hands on top of each other, and then one of them shouts out and then takes a shot of whiskey or something. That is the moment of inspiration for the music video that we are going to be dissecting and analyzing today in this podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to the Film and Learning Podcast. I'm Mark, the owner at Film and Learning, and I wrote an article about this, and we're going to discuss it today. It's going to be Maya and me having this conversation, and I intentionally asked her not to watch the music video or do anything reading about it or anything. So she's coming into this completely blind, and we're going to have just a little chat about it. I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of mix it up like that. So Maya, welcome to this week's episode.
Okay, whiskey and hand slapping sounds kind of interesting. I mean, I'm sure it's symbolic of something.
Yeah, well,
it usually is, right?
It's a drinking game, right? So is it symbolic of anything?
Drinking games are symbolic of everything. Back in the day, people used them to break the ice, bond over shared silliness, and maybe forget their troubles for a bit.
The name of this video is APT, and it's performed by Bruno Mars and ROSÉ. And that's where there's kind of a fun parallel here, because in a previous episode, we talked about Bruno Mars collaborating with Lady Gaga in Die With a Smile. And I'll link that down below in the show notes. But this music video is similar in some ways and very different in other ways. Where that one was more performative, Lawrence Welkish, this one is more like a drinking game. Like you said, it's a bonding ritual. It's fun, it's loud, it's impossible to ignore. There's bold pinks and a lot of quirky visuals and a nice occasional throwback like aesthetic. It feels completely new and at the same time somewhat nostalgic.
Oh, I love a good throwback. Give me 80s vibes any day. So, ROSÉ and Bruno Mars, huh? That's an interesting pairing. What about this quirky aesthetic? Can you give me some specifics? Like, what kind of throwbacks are we talking?
Yeah, the throwbacks are mostly in the cinematography. Like, the cinematography is a nice mix of several different styles, and it's so weird, but it also really works. I would say if you were to look for not inspirations for this video, but just like similar looks, you could look at Lunch by Billie Eilish. That she was inspired by the 2000s hip hop videos with a fisheye lens, some raw color grading. Obviously, Die With a Smile, Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga. There's that influence I already mentioned. New Jeans by Super Shy is kind of 1990s minimal set design inspired. What makes it really stand out is that there's this sharp contrast between the modern execution of cinematography and then these old school techniques, whether it's a round wide angle shot that gives you kind of a warped, slightly offbeat, like exaggerated look.
I'm picturing this fisheye lens making everything look like we're peering through a funhouse mirror, you know?
It kind of has that look. It really does. And it'll go from a regular wide screen and then it'll just cut to that, and then it'll just cut to a different aspect ratio. Like it'll suddenly go square, like a 90s TV that has this really strong MTV vibe to it. Like they put the grain on the screen. It mimics kind of lo-fi videos that were very common in the 90s. It would be something that you could probably shoot with like a handheld camcorder at that time. But the way it's done is like you can switch from the modern to this retro look and back again, and there's something about the performance, the editing, everything, it just works.
Like a visual roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're saying, we're going to keep you on your toes. And that janky TV static effect, I bet it really adds to the energy. You know how sometimes when things are a little rough around the edges, they have more personality?
That's really on point. You're right. It has a lot of personality because it's just kind of throwing the viewer around a little bit. It's like you're at a party and everything's crazy, but it all at the same time still kind of works. To add to the cinematography, there is some use of CGI with a lot of hand-drawn graphics. So there's like comic book style doodles, text overlays. That gives it another kind of DIY, unfinished party vibe aesthetic. Here's a modern music video. Here's a 90s MTV video. Here's something that looks like a 2000s hip hop video. Here's this very cinematic, hand-drawn art, and it's all done in a way that really works. And I would really say it kind of hails back to like our Linkin Park episode where we talked about Over Each Other, where Korean filmmaking is making more and more influences in Western storytelling, and you can definitely see some of that mix into this music video as well.
Wow, so it's like a visual mixtape. You've got these distinct styles, and the Korean influence adds a really interesting wrinkle. Is that throughout the entire video, or are there specific?
Yeah, it's throughout the entire video.
Okay. I'm starting to get a real feel for this thing. Hold on. Hand-drawn graphics, old school MTV vibes, 90s camcorder aesthetic, classy K-drama influences.
Well, and let's throw in one more thing. The very beginning, like the very first thing you see, it introduces this effect, which is a very bold visual callback with the whole movie's pink. Everything in there is pink. But in the very beginning, you follow like a black line that ends up being a microphone cord, and it ends up with two black silhouettes, which is Bruno Mars and ROSÉ. And the immediate reaction is this looks exactly like those iconic Apple iPod ads from the early 2000s. And then they start dancing, the microphone cords are moving, and everything is a very clear callback to that very successful ad campaign.
Hold up. Are you saying they basically Trojan horsed an iPod commercial into this?
Yeah.
That's genius. I mean, it's playful, nostalgic, and totally unexpected.
It is.
Like,
I wouldn't think of mimicking a commercial in a music video.
Right. I mean, it's so meta and unexpected. I bet people who saw those iPod ads back in the day, they'll catch that right away and be like, wait a minute. It's
right.
Like a wink to the past.
It is. Like and I think that's part of why this works so well. When you're watching like Star Wars 7, for instance, you see a very old Harrison Ford step onto the Millennium Falcon for the first time in however many years since the original Star Wars movies. And Han Solo's back where he belongs. And it gives you this very nostalgic moment where you're just like, yes, right? And Star Wars 7 did that too much. It was like mostly fan service, not a lot of great storytelling. But it did pull the old timers who had seen those original movies into a new movie and kind of function as like, hey, you're going to like this because we understand you. And I think that's largely what this pop video is doing. Like, if I'm a kid who grew up and didn't see like the 90s or the early 2000s Apple video commercials, I may not understand that, but it's still got something there for me, which is just a fun pop song.
Exactly. It's a multi-layered experience. There's something there for everyone, even if they don't catch every reference. It's like a delicious layered cake. You can enjoy just the frosting, or you can dig in and savor all the flavors.
Yeah, and speaking of layers, here's another thing that I caught as one of those, quotes, old-timers who grew up in the Pacific Northwest in the 1990s. They're wearing layered clothing and flannel and black leather. These outfits that they're wearing very clearly are callbacks to the punk age of rock, 70s, 80s rock, and especially the early 1990s grunge. And that becomes very obvious when there's one shot where both ROSÉ and Bruno Mars are playing Fender Jag Stangs, which is a guitar. It's in this video they're red, but Kurt Cobain played one that was blue, and he's also the guy who designed it with Fender. So it's not a subtle nod to grunge culture, and it gives some extra credibility in this very bubblegum pop song to rock fans from the 1990s. So I thought that was another kind of fun visual callback to mash up these two things that could not be more different.
So they're serving grunge realness in a pop wrapper. I'm getting a whole vibe now. It's like they took these disparate elements, the drinking game, the vintage aesthetics, the rock iconography, and blended them into this intoxicating concoction. You know,
and that's really
what
it is. Yeah, I do. That's really what it is. It's an intoxicating concoction. You're right. It is like I had to take the shot when I watch this music video. And the beauty of it is that it's fun without trying too hard or being too cool or forcing it. It's just full of both Rosé and Bruno Mars personalities. It doesn't try to over-explain itself. It's not trying to make some deep point. It's just seriously trying to have a lot of fun without an enormous amount of CGI or some sort of something else. It's just like, let's have a neon-drenched party.
It sounds like a blast. It's refreshing to hear a music video doing its own thing, not taking itself too seriously. They're saying, come on, let loose. Let's celebrate being alive.
Yeah. And I think to put this music video in its place, right, it came out October 18 of 2024. And when this comes out, and I think it's relevant now just a few months later, but when this comes out, the United States is looking at an election season, which is always such a negative experience when you're watching the news or social media or whatever. And then in the midst of this comes this fun little island of, let's just check out for 3 minutes and just have fun. And I think there's something valuable to that. Let's focus on something good.
Sometimes we all need a little reminder that joy still exists in the world.
Right.
And what better way to find it than through a music video that embraces everything fun and silly and unexpected.
No matter what you're doing out there, just I think the importance of this music video is like we just said, is just like take a second. Throughout your day, just take a second and have a moment of joy. It doesn't have to be watching a music video. It could just be sitting in a park, eating your sandwich on a bench, or sitting in your car watching it snow. Just take a second and just enjoy life for 3 minutes. And if you can throw in some throwbacks to your childhood, even better.
Thanks for having me on, Mark. This was a blast.
Thank you, Maya, and thank you everybody for listening to this podcast. If you want to read the entire article I wrote on this, you can find that on filmlearning.com, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. So until next time, I encourage you to get out and just find a little bit of joy in your day, and I will catch you in our next episode.